We know that Andrew Luck right now is dealing with a high ankle issue as well. And as you mentioned, it's his status for week one is still up in the air. How far do you think Andrew Luck drops in some drafts? And how much value could there be potentially drafting Andrew Luck this year?
Yeah, I moved him down. I had him at number 2 overall on my quarterback board. I had Deshaun Watson at 1. I've moved Mahomes to 2. People are probably freaking out already with me just even saying that, but it's really rare for quarterbacks to repeat as the la creme de la cremes, if you will, of the position in consecutive years. I've got Rodgers at 3, and I've got Luck at 4, and I'm contemplating shifting him down a little bit further, even past the likes of a Matt Ryan, Baker Mayfield. I'm really bullish on Kyler Murray, who I have at 5. It's just such a vague, such a cloudy, murky situation right now in Indianapolis on exactly when he's going to be back, what precisely the injury is. Is it truly a high ankle sprain? Is it something more than that? We heard it was like a small bone injury before. There's a lot of uncertainty here. It makes me feel queasy. So I'm typically risk averse. The good news here, though, with Luck is he was already going in the mid-70s, low 80s in terms of average draft position, some 40 picks after Patrick Mahomes is coming off the board in average settings. Now he's going to approach triple figures in terms of ADP. So I could look at this as a buying opportunity, knowing how deep the position is, knowing that you can plug and play, say, maybe a Josh Allen, a Mitch Trubisky, a Phillip Rivers, if you're in a 12-team single quarterback league the first couple of weeks of the regular season.
All right, Brad, I'm glad you said Kyler Murray because the Raiders and Cardinals played tonight, and Kyler Murray, I know it was his first preseason game, but man, he looked good. The passes were accurate. He looks ridiculously fast. What I really want to ask you about is David Johnson. I know he's a guy that a lot of people have going high in round 1. I know the air raid offense with Cliff Kingsbury, and I know just the passes Murray was throwing to David Johnson were accurate on those screens. But the one thing I'm worried about is that putrid offensive line in Arizona. I know they've addressed it a little bit. How leery are you of drafting David Johnson, or you're all in on David Johnson because he's probably going to catch a ridiculous amount of passes?
I'm all in. I pushed the entire stack of chips into the center of the pot. I'm splashing it right now. I'm very confident in the air raid and how it's going to transition to the NFL level. It's not going to be flawless. There are going to be occasional potholes in the road, but it's going to take several weeks, maybe even much of the season, for defensive coordinators to really figure it out from a pro perspective in attacking this offense. It is predicated on spacing. And the way that I like to describe it is, I'm a big college basketball guy as well. John Beilein, who's now head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, when he was the lead man for the Michigan Wolverines, he runs a swing offense. And his entire offensive scheme was predicated on spacing and creating, one-on-one single matchups. And really, that idea is it transfers to what the air raid does, but on turf. And if you look at the offensive line, yeah, they upgraded with some veterans, but it still looks rickety on paper in terms of the grades of some of these guys. But they space out within the air raid scheme the offensive linemen and how they set up and on a give-in-give-out play. There's about a 6-inch gap between each offensive lineman more than in traditional settings. So what does that create? Well, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, that's creating all kinds of space for a defender to sprint through and sack the quarterback. But what it does is it creates more running lanes. It creates more passing lanes. And when you have an accurate, jackrabbit fast quarterback and Kyler Murray who could deliver the ball crisply and on time, there's going to be a lot of short, quick hooks, slants, outs within this scheme, a lot of design dump-off screens to David Johnson to alleviate that oncoming pressure and to really try to make this offense flourish. So I'm not overly concerned about the offensive line. Knowing the RPO is going to be at play here, I think David Johnson's going to find all kinds of room to operate, whether on the ground or through the air. And I would not be at all surprised, fellas, if he flirts with 1,000 and possibly join Roger Craig and Marshall Faulk in that esteemed class of people who have achieved that feat.
Where does Larry Fitzgerald fit into that offense? Could he potentially be a flex guy for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think Christian Kirk is the wide receiver to target within this scheme first and foremost because he's familiar with the air raid. He played in a similar system at Texas A&M. He, like Kyler Murray, has been educating the veterans like Larry Fitzgerald much of this summer on how this system works, the ins and outs of it. He's a guy that you're getting right now in the mid-70s in terms of ADP, who I think could finish inside the top 20 among wide receivers when the dust settles here come January. But I think Fitzgerald can easily be a top 36 or a strong wide receiver 3 within this scheme. I mean, what does Larry do best? Larry's got that large caboose, right, that he uses to his advantage,
right,
and he swings it around to create space almost like a power forward does in the paint around the 10 to grab a board. So he can sit down on routes. And, again, this system is based in quick hits, 1-2 release. And because Fitzgerald is such an outstanding route runner, and because of his size, because of his ability to gain separation from a defender, he's going to be an integral part of this system. So, I would say if you set the over-under at like 80 and a half receptions, I'd be inclined to take the over. I think he's going to finish probably in that 82 to 86 catch range and have a bit of a revival after that putrid offense in general that was run down there in the Sonoran last year.
Yahoo Sports fantasy football writer, host of the Fantasy Record podcast, Brad Evans, joining us here, Sportsnet today. I'm George on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. All right, Brad, another first-round question for you. Todd Gurley, 25 years old, has an arthritic knee already, which is obviously concerning. Is he dropping too far low for you in the first round, or do you gamble on Todd Gurley and his health?
Well, congratulations. You just said the phrase that pays. Arthritic knee.
Yes.
That's all you need to know. Arthritic knee, folks. Larry King has a better knee than Todd Gurley does. All right?
That's no good.
It is a major concern. And I understand why people are still investing high draft capital in Gurley, knowing the downsides and all the smoke signals that have come out of Southern California for much of the offseason. The fact that this team went out and drafted Darrell Henderson pretty early in the draft. The fact that they re-signed Malcolm Brown in the offseason as well to add additional depth to the running back position. The fact that Sean McVay came out and said, hey, we want to feature more two running back formation. The fact that they have this veteran management plan installed to nourish and protect Todd Gurley's needs. The fact even recently that Todd Gurley's not even going with the team to their exhibition game in Hawaii. I mean, come on, folks. What else do you need? These are all red flags. Mm-hmm. Our own Charles Robinson, a Yahoo Sports reporter a couple of weeks ago, after talking to McVay and the coaching staff, that they're hoping that Todd Gurley's going to play about 65% of the snaps. He played 88% of the snaps last year.
Wow.
And there's no guarantee, even when he's on the field for those 65% of snaps, that he's going to touch the rock every single time, or he's going to get the goal line carries, or he's going to be the primary receiving back. I want nothing to do with him. He's typically going in the early second round. Adam Schefter came out recently and said all this hullabaloo is overblown in regards to Gurley. I rarely disagree with the great Adam Schefter, but this one just reeks of him missing multiple games and being utilized in a limited capacity, much like we saw during the Rams Super Bowl run last year.
Is Cooper Kupp a guy you kind of want to reach for? He's back after suffering that knee injury, but he was Jared Goff's security blanket and had a very productive season before he got banged up. Is he a guy you definitely want to target maybe earlier than maybe you should in drafts?
Yeah, I think so. You know, if you're looking at the triumvirate of Rams receivers between him and Woods and Cooks, he's probably the best value. I mean, they're all going roughly the same in fantasy drafts in that round 3, round 4, 12-team range, whether it's a half-point PPR or full-point PPR. But Kupp is a guy that, yeah, he's made strides in his recovery. It's been relatively smooth. No hiccups along the way. It looks like he's going to be all systems go come week 1. And we know that Jared Goff really leaned on his binky, his safety blanket in the short to intermediate field last year. You know, a guy that saw a large target share. And Goff just wasn't the same quarterback sans Cooper Kupp. I mean, he saw him over the last 6 games, including the playoff run. He was really pedestrian, Goff was. He averages 231 pass yards per game. Disgusting 6.4 YPA, completed less than 60% of his passes, had a 7 to 8 touchdown interception split. I mean, those are, again, very sluggish numbers for a player that was really lighting it up early in the season. So Kupp, I think, is critical to the offensive success of the Rams, and a player that is going to be, let loose right away week one. And I think he is, probably going to be consistently in that 5 to 7 catch range, much like we saw last year pre-knee injury.
All right, Brad. I teased this question before you jumped on. Who is going to have more combined yards? Ben and Juju in Pittsburgh or Derek and AB in Oakland?
Well, you solved the riddle right there by saying Ben. Okay, Ben, who is far superior than Derek Carr. If Derek is anything like his last name, right? If we put him in those kind of terms, he is the Carr and Thelma and Louise, right? He's driving off the cliff into the deep canyon. Carr is a decent quarterback. He's just average. He's just He's vanilla. You go to Baskin Robbins, and that's what you're getting. You're not getting a rainbow-colored ice cream or cookie dough or anything that's got like triple chocolate chunk. You're getting vanilla on a cone. That's it. I do like the fact that he was number 4 in deep ball completion percentage last season. I think that is a great match with Antonio Brown's skill set. But for me, I'm going to go with Ben Roethlisberger and Juju Smith-Schuster. And by all accounts, all reports from Pittsburgh, Juju has looked unstoppable. And we got to remember, he's only 22?
Right.
He's only 22 years old, so the sky's the limit for Juju now that he's taking on the number 1 role in what will still be a prolific passing offense tied to a quarterback, though in advanced age, and Roethlisberger still playing at a high level.
Brad, we all know that elite receiver is really deep this year, but is Davante Adams in a PPR potentially the safest pick at receiver in round 1 or early round 2?
There's a lot of candidates we can throw into the mix here for that title. DeAndre Hopkins is there. Michael Thomas is certainly there. Julio Jones, OBJ, even Juju to a certain extent. I think Adams probably is the safest because he has the highest touchdown floor of any of them. It's not necessarily total number of catches. It's just he's going to score early and often this year. If you're into the betting arts, like some people are, like myself, whether in the States, in Jersey, or out in the desert, in Vegas, I've seen Adams consistently 10-1 to lead the NFL in touchdown receptions. I think that's one of the best bets on the board. I think he's a guy that could easily score, 12 to 15 times this year, assuming Aaron Rodgers can remain healthy and under center for the entire season. This is going to be a fantastic Green Bay offense. Hopefully, Rodgers will not butt heads with Matt LaFleur, much like he did with Mike McCarthy last year. But Adams is his go-to guy inside the red zone. He's going to be probably one of the highest targeted guys inside the 20. So I think you're right. I think Adams is probably the safest wide receiver, even in a standard league, for fantasy owners to target this year.
We talk about how deep wide receiver is, but tight end seems like it's really thin this year outside of the top 3 in Ertz, Kittle, and, of course, Travis Kelce. Do you reach for a tight end in your draft this year?
I actually think it's fairly deep. Now, I will say this. I think it seems like every year I go into a draft, I look at tight end, I'm thinking, it's not that bad. And then week 8 rolls around, and you just are like, barf. This is disgusting. It's like a desolate wasteland by that time due to injury and ineptitude and just general turnover. But I do like much of what the top 10 is representing right now. I'm not reaching for Travis Kelce in round 1. That is a popular trend. Has really gained some steam here in recent weeks. I'm just not an advocate. I've never drafted Gronk, even at his zenith of his career, in round 1. I think you really, put yourself into a corner with running backs and wide receivers if you go that route. Kittle and Ertz are going consistently in round 3. Again, deserving. It's rare that I would reach for those guys at that point. I prefer the next tier, which I feel is discounted and could be just as good. And, of the 3, either one of these guys could jump up and be inside that elite class this time next year. And that's O.J. Howard, who was number 1 in yards per target among tight ends last season. On a Bucs offense, it's like going to throw it 675 times because they're already down 30-0 in every game because that defense is going to royally suck this year. I think he's a great target, say, around 5. Evan Ingram, love him too. Got to see a massive target share. What we know about Eli Manning is this. Besides the all-shucks faces that he makes on the sidelines on occasion, he's got alligator arms. He's always dinking and dunking underneath. And without Golden Tate the first 4 games of the season after he lost his suspension appeal, I love Evan Ingram even more. Hunter Henry. And going back to the Chargers, that's a guy that I could really see taking a quantum leap in production. Oh, guys, I even like Eric Ebron. I know there's going to be TD regression, but he's being heavily discounted. We'll see what happens with Luck, but he could catch 8-9 scores this year. Mark Andrews, you're getting in the triple figures in terms of overall ADP, and he is a breakout candidate. He's made sensational catch after sensational catch in Ravens camp. So, again, they're great values there. Wait on the next tier or even later. Don't go after the big 3 at tight end.
All right, Brad, before I let you go, I'm sure you've experienced this many times. Nothing aggravates me more in fantasy football when the other guy's kicker has a monster day and beats you because of his damn kicker. You're one of the big wheels in fantasy down south. Is it time for us to abolish the kicker position in fantasy football?
Hell yes.
All right.
If you haven't done it already, you need to do it now and employ Superflex instead. If you don't know what a Superflex is, give kicker the boots, hashtag.
Yeah.
That's a movement that I've created on Twitter.
I like it.
Do that, A. And then B, with the Superflex, you install that. Look, it's a passing league. Josh Allen needs a home, okay?
He sure does.
It's a fantasy league. So what a Superflex is it's a qualifier for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. You could flex any of those into that position. So essentially you become a 2-quarterback league, and it's the bee's knees, man. It's one of the greatest inventions ever, and it ratchets up the fun factor, and you don't get burned by a missed PAT. You don't get burned by random 5 field goal games from some dude that's kicking for Tennessee. The heck with kickers, man. I'm done with them. They are dead to me. Superflex all the way. Vote for me in 2020.